morning. I'm Rabbi Laura Abraisley. I'm one of the rabbis here at Beth Or. First, I'll say my apologies from Rabbi Greg Marks and Rabbi David Gerber, my contemporaries and clergy in crime. One of them I have downstairs doing family education, and the other one I think is on a plane to Morocco for our congregational trip there. So he gets no excuses, but Rabbi Gerber I have working. So it's my pleasure to welcome you this morning to our congregation and to, it looks like the first in a series from the Bux-Mont Kehillah, which we are proud members of and delighted to be a part of. So we're in this neighborhood Kehillah, which is funded by the Jewish Federation of Greater Philadelphia. And I first want to say thank you to the planning committee. Is the planning committee here? They're probably planning somewhere. They're out planning somewhere. Because we all know without dedicated volunteers working with dedicated professionals, these types of things really never get going. So, and I know we're going to address this morning a really important topic, I think, for many of us, which is the sandwich generation. What does it mean to be somebody, 40s, 50s, 60s, dealing with aging parents or parents who have already passed away and the challenges of that, as well as children? I'm sort of on the early edge of the sandwich generation, indeed, sort of find myself questioning all these kinds of things. So I indeed think that this morning's topic is very important. And knowing that this is the beginning of a 5-part series that starts this morning and goes throughout the fall from November 3rd to November 11th at a number of our partner congregations around the area. And I'm going to refer you to this brochure, which I assume has everything in it that you need to know. So now, the most important part of my morning is I just had the pleasure of spending the last 10 minutes with Rabbi Adras, who I had never met before, but I had certainly heard his name in passing. We are both graduates of the Hebrew Union College Jewish Institute of Religion. I graduated from the LA campus, Cincinnati, a couple of years apart. And Rabbi Adras is here this morning. He is a man, clearly, based on his bio, which is in here, which I'll just briefly go over, is a man who brings a tremendous amount of wisdom and expertise to this subject matter. Rabbi Adras is the founder and editor of don't look it up right now, JewishSacredAging.com, which is about the spirituality of being a baby boomer, and about aging. What does it mean to be Jew? What is the Jewish wisdom on aging? Which I think is a really important topic. My job here at Beth Or is to worry about the students, but indeed I know that Judaism teaches us that we are here from a 0 to 120, if we're lucky, right? And I think of my job as Director of Lifelong Learning. I'm responsible for the Jewish learning from 0 to 120, and indeed Rabbi Adras is working on this other end. What does it mean to be an adult? What does it mean to be continuing to grow, continuing to learn? He served in the URJ for 33 years as the regional director for the Pennsylvania Council and director for Jewish Family Concerns, which meant he spent a lot of time in his car, driving around, welcoming and being of service to congregations that may or may not have the opportunity to have a full-time rabbi. He's also served congregations in California, and most recently was the senior rabbi of McCourt Shalom in Cherry Hill, New Jersey. He teaches family-related classes at HUC in New York, and there are a tremendous amount of other things on here, but I think most importantly, he's a consultant about aging and about baby boomers in the Jewish world. So it's my pleasure this morning to introduce to you Rabbi Richard Adras.
Thank you very much, Rabbi. This is so formal. And I'm on a bima in the synagogue, and the temptation, of course, is to do the greatest hits sermon CD. Here's a paragraph from Yom Kippur of 1978. It's a great sermon. Because every rabbi I know has that CD somewhere. Hi, whenever you're ready. First of all, thank you to the committee, Rabbi Richmond, Jen, the people who put this together. How many of you are members of Beth Or? Okay, so I'm a Philly guy. I grew up in Philly. I remember Beth Or when I was a kid, a teenager, when it was literally very, very, very small. And then when I was a regional director in in the building that preceded this, what they used to call Spring House. Is Spring House still existing?
Yes.
Okay, and now you're in Maple Glen. And when I grew up in Mount Airy, I don't think these places existed. Do you remember Wings Field? Excuse me, this does not count. My dad used to take me to Wings Field to look at the airplanes, which I think is now a housing development. Are you serious? Oh, wow. It's near here, isn't it?
Yes.
Cool.
Closer to the other place than you.
What?
Closer to Spring House.
Closer to Spring House?
But you're here.
Thank you. That's good. Anyways, thank you very much for this invitation. My task this morning is to try and set the table for these discussions that we're going to be involved with over the next couple of months. Discussions that are going to start taking place today and continue for these several weeks at a variety of these locations that are all in your program. And in reality, as I would venture to bet, many of these conversations are already taking place in the privacy of family room, right now around the brunch table, a dinner table, over lunch, or really in the privacy of many of our own hearts and souls. So you see, we have been given this wonderful, wonderful gift, the gift of a longer life. Baby boomers, this culturally transforming generation born from the close of World War II through 1964, is about to transform the concept of aging. These issues of caregiving, end-of-life preparation, our own spiritual growth, all seem to coalesce around one of the great spiritual questions: what shall we do with the time that we have left? A person in their 60s who may begin to transition from full-time work, if they're able to, may have, we are told, another 20 or 30 or perhaps more years to live. What do you do with that? What do you do with that gift? We hope that these years, that these years will be ones filled with health and vitality. But how do we plan for the other possibilities? What about my relationships? Will I outlive my money? How do I create a life that gives me reason to get up in the morning? We also need to remember that boomers are not a homogeneous cohort. This is a generation that was born and created in the shadow of Hiroshima and ended in the shadow of November 22nd, 1963. The earliest boomers, the first stage, are now enjoying Medicare and Social Security, right? Thank God. And the youngest are turning 50 this year and have many of the life challenges ahead that many of us have faced. The statistics, by the way, of our generation are absolutely staggering and raise questions that we're going to look at in the coming weeks. For example, we are being told that some 10,000 people turn 65 every day in this country. And as of this year, 2014, every single baby boomer now alive is at least 50 years of age. And if we take the retirement age at 65, experts are saying that we're going to spend some 22% of our life retired, a figure that is rising given our own longevity. And for our Jewish community, which is older by far than the general American Jewish community, close to 25% of the current American Jewish population is 65 years of age and over. The fastest segment of our community, the fastest segment of that, are people over the age of 85. And by the way, as I bet you some of you know, it's not unusual that the next largest group that seems to be growing are those people over the age of 100. You all want to get to be on Willard Scott, or eat a lot of Smucker's jam or something. When we began the Sacred Aging Project, when I worked for the Union and directed the Department of Jewish Family Concerns, we began this look, intensive look at this changing demographic, when we looked at the demographic analysis of the entire American Jewish community and saw the reality which is contrasted to the fact that most of our congregations are pediatric in their orientation. And one of the reasons for the drift away from institutional Judaism on the part of boomers may be this fact that for so many of our congregations, there is very little in the way of substantive programming for the over 50 set. Yet, this is the age group that begins to deal with so many crucial life-altering challenges for which Judaism has so much to say and to teach. And this is one of the goals for this series. We want to examine how Jewish text and Jewish tradition can help guide us so that we can transition into the next stage of our lives and, frankly, to plant some programmatic seeds for you to take back to your own congregation or your own agency for implementation. The reason for this goes beyond the basic desire to reach more people within the confines of Jewish life. There comes a time, I feel, really around this time in our lives that we begin to assess where we have come from, where we wish to go. And in the interest of full disclosure, I'm absolutely no different than any of you in this. These last few years for me personally have begun to bring home the fact that I myself am transitioning into a very different stage of life. I, as many of us, have begun to think about what this life means, what we wish to leave behind, what our purpose is. I hope that we can begin to acquire a sense of wisdom based upon life experience, not necessarily book knowledge. These questions stem, let me suggest, directly from our sacred text. In fact, the key chapter in Torah that gives us the insights is what we read this past Shabbat in congregations around the world, Genesis 3. Because in that chapter, this is the wonderful mythology of the Garden of Eden. And in that chapter, as Adam and Eve hide from God, once they have become aware of their own nakedness, God roams the garden and asks the first question that is raised in the Torah, Ayeka, where are you? That is, of course, the question we spend our lives trying to answer. The importance of this chapter is in the fact that it is the biblical author's introduction to the reality of our own mortality. And as one of my professors at the Hebrew Union College in Cincinnati taught, it is this chapter that tells of the fact that we are all mortal, that we will die. This Ayeka becomes the most powerful of all questions directed to us. For it is in the attempt to answer that question that we come to understand the why questions of existence. These are, ladies and gentlemen, the questions that I suggest we begin to ask ourselves. They are uneasy questions. They're not nice questions. They're questions that in most of our conscious world we really do our best to run away from. But in truth, I believe that they are the questions that each human being somewhere, sometime, in the privacy of their souls asks. They are the questions that give birth to religion. They are the questions that have given birth to civilization. Why was I born? Why must I die? Why? For what purpose am I alive? These are the great spiritual questions that lay at the heart of every religion. It is our hope that as we raise the issues established for this series, we'll be able to open up a dialogue which will enable us to explore some of our own pathways to the answers to these questions. I stress the spiritual aspect of our aging because there's a growing body of media and literature that sees aging as a medical issue. As if by some magic, if we take enough pills, or rub enough creams over us, or inject enough Botox, or whatever, we'll be able to stop the aging process. And as members of the baby boom generation, these should not surprise us at all. We grow up with the veneration of youth. The veneration of youth is a prime social value. Indeed, our culture is still one that holds youth as an ideal. One of the ethical questions often overlooked in the scientific rush to find the genetic secrets of aging, and there are tons of research centers around the country that are actually doing that. One of these questions that often is overlooked is assuming that the scientists can unlock those secrets, and we're getting closer, by the way, and allow us to live to 100 or the mythical 120. Do you want to? I mean, do you want to live to 120 as a 120-year-old? Or would you rather live to 120 as a 45-year-old? It is this fear of debilitation, this fear of dependence, this fear of isolation and aloneness that made Dr. Ezekiel Emanuel's article in this month's Atlantic magazine so popular. The article, I don't know if some of you read the article, it's been all over the place, called Why I Hope to Die at 75, has caused quite a stir on online and in op-ed pages. Yet the article that precedes Emanuel's article by Greg Easterbrook, entitled What Happens When We Live to 100, raises many of the ethical and societal questions that need to be discussed again. The gift of time. The gift of time. And what we're going to do with it. But what of the time when life begins to ebb? We are going to spend some time in conversation regarding how Judaism, across the denominational lines, looks at this very present issue of advanced care and care at the end of life. If we are taught, as many of you have, and as you know from Bima after Bima, about the concept of Chaim and the concept of human life and how precious it is, we have to also ask the question, is it ever permissible to allow a person to die? Is there any value in Judaism in pain and suffering? What do we believe regarding palliative care and hospice care? What are the issues that influence a person and a family and how they can make an informed Jewish decision as life begins to end? Is there a system that we can use to assist us in making these decisions? These questions are very, some of you in this room have walked this walk. Some of you are walking this walk. And if you haven't, the odds are that many of you who haven't will. This is a very present question. The class I teach right now at HUC on Monday mornings is actually dealing with this tomorrow. The importance of this tonight on 60 Minutes, assuming the football game doesn't block it off, but the Eagles aren't playing, so who cares? We won't get off on sports because we'll be here till noon. There's a piece on 60 Minutes allegedly on the court case, the Mancini case out of the state of Pennsylvania on assisted suicide. And this other individual, this young woman who moved to Oregon so that she could qualify for the Right to Die Death with Dignity Act, is all over the press in a variety of different ways, pros and cons. PBS NewsHour this last week just had another piece on this. This is an issue that is extremely present, extremely present, and I would suggest to you is being totally driven by our generation's desire to control our own death. We'll discuss some of this, and hopefully by the time we get to that section, wherever we're going to be, whatever that is, I may actually have a copy of the, hi little kids, hi. We may actually have a copy for you of the law in the state of New Jersey. Right now, where I'm from Jersey, as you can probably tell, there's a bill in the state legislature that is past committee and should be up for review again this fall on legalizing assisted death. In fact, on December 2nd, I have the guy who sponsored the bill scheduled to be on my radio show on a Tuesday morning to discuss how that bill came about. So New Jersey is getting closer to legalizing the same law that is in Oregon. So this conversation is, believe me, not in the luft, as my former camp director would say. It's very, very present around the country. These discussions about end of life, advanced care, etc., flow naturally, I'm going to suggest to you, from one other issue that we're going to discuss, which is, I want to suggest to you, the number one issue of concern for our generation. We've created in this country a new life stage. It's called the life stage of the caregiver. It's a life stage that few of us volunteer for. I don't know any of us, and having been one myself, actually get up in the morning and say, boy, I think for the next month, week, or years, I think I would like to be a full-time or part-time caregiver. The transition into the stage of caregiver usually comes through a phone call or a meeting with a doctor and a diagnosis that you perhaps did not expect or feared. It is a stage that some of you, I bet, know, can last not necessarily a day, but weeks, and in some cases, can last years. The art of caregiving is a subject that we're going to examine in detail. It is a subject that Jewish texts have dealt with, from references in the Torah, as well as a major discussion in the Talmud. The stress and strain of the caregiver and the stress and strain on the caregiver families create systemic changes in a family system. These stresses and strains and the reality of this issue for so many families have made it possible for some scholars who study this to maintain that in the next few decades, as our parents and the boomers age out, elder care issues are going to replace child care issues as a major family stressor. The financial and emotional challenges known to many of us are quite real. Agencies from the AARP to ones like National Caregiving Foundations have sounded a concern about the potential lack of qualified caregivers and gerontologists as we ourselves age out. Indeed, Dr. Lawrence Kotlikoff, a leading economist at Boston University, has studied these trends and predicted as early as a decade ago that one aspect of this challenge is the fact that there are less people paying into the system to fund our own aging. Kotlikoff maintained that at the close of World War II, listen to this, the ratio for workers paying into the system to fund our retirement was about 7 to 1. It is now between 2 and 3 to 1. The economics of aging has and will continue to impact the challenges associated with caregiving and with our own aging process. And there's study after study after study. One was just released again last week, indicating that our generation has not saved enough money for caregiving issues, and that for those of us who walk this walk, and I'll bet you my Philly season tickets, worthless as they may be, although they just did send me the bill for next year. I mean, do you realize for a minor league team? But you know I'm not. Somebody asked me the other day, I was doing something for a congregation. They said, what is your honorarium? And I said, well, if you really know the truth, it's a left fielder, a power hitting third baseman, and 3 starting pitchers. And they hung up. You're Mets fans. Who knew? Anyway, the challenge of this life stage of caregiver can also provide an individual with unexpected opportunities. This is something we rarely also discuss. But I would also venture to say many of you have experienced this. Unbelievable opportunities for personal spiritual growth and a re-energizing in many ways of personal relationships. Many of us have witnessed this as people care for each other. Quiet opportunities arise to deal with past family and personal issues. Reconciliations can take place, and a profound moment arises often when we as the caregiver understand that this could be us. And how would we wish to be treated. These are moments of great meaning in a profoundly personal way, is when we take hold of our parents who assist them up the ramp into the doctor's office and feel this once strong body now becoming frail and dependent on us. The child who now in many cases becomes in a way a parent to their own parent, giving rise to that challenge from Torah, kabed and tirah, to honor and to respect. One of the most challenging issues that faces us in the next few decades will be that of the expected explosion in dementia and Alzheimer's. The National Alzheimer's Association is telling us that we can expect a tripling in the number of cases between now and the next several decades. The mental health aspect of life is one we shall discuss as well. Judaism and our sacred texts have interesting insights, even diagnostic tools that raise the issue of mental health and mental illness. Centuries ago, these were raised in our sacred tradition, and these insights and Talmudic passages have tremendous resonance and relevance for us today. Time, this most precious of gift, has also given us opportunities for challenges in our own life. This gift of time has allowed people as they transition from full-time work to realize dreams and to reinvent themselves. Sometimes this reinvention is out of necessity, as in the economic downturn of 2008, which hit baby boomers very hard. Yet in other circumstances, we are finding that once the kids have left the house, and assuming they don't move back in, we have the time to explore life in ways that no other generation has ever had. The literature and the web are filled with articles and sites that tout the liberating aspect of finding one's own bliss. Entrepreneurship amongst boomers is growing. Architects are redesigning living spaces. And the talk around the country is of growing types of communal responsibilities for shared housing as we age, all to avoid us going in to a nursing home. Allied to this, according to many, is the new type of grandparent. One not content to just sit in the rocker, but one who is enjoying that trip to Machu Picchu, that elder hostel at a major university in a continuing education class, or as my friends Larry and Gail are right now, on safari in Africa. Who knew? The changes in relationships with others and our own self have been one of the great aspects of our own generation's aging. The Easterbrook article that I referred to before in the Atlantic comments on this development by linking it to the caregiving challenges and the changing reality of family dynamics. He writes this very, very interesting paragraph. As longevity increases, so too does the number of living grandparents. Start thinking of your own families. Families that once might have had one oldest old relative find themselves with 3 or 4, all expecting care or money. At the same time, traditional family trees are being replaced with diagrams that resemble maps of the London Underground. Will children of blended families feel the same obligation to care for aging step-parents as they feel for biological parents? Just the entry of the phrase birth parent into the national lexicon suggests the changing magnitude that is before us. We're going to explore how in Jewish texts we are given the freedom to evolve our identity and relationships, as well as the impact of our changed Jewish family. In addition, we will explore aspects of our generation's spiritual growth that have often been overlooked and largely unexamined. We're seeing an explosion of creative rituals that speak to new life stages. This goes back, I believe, to the desire to have some connection in our life to that which is beyond our own self. It is part of our quest to answer those why questions. We want these life stages to have a meaning beyond the moment, so we will spend some time discussing the development of rituals, for example, for celebrating the acquisition of aging, for signing an advance directive, for older adult cohabitation, and for the need to redefine adultery in light of dementia and Alzheimer's. As many of you know, we have just concluded this festival of Sukkot. The frail dwellings of Sukkot are symbolic, as you know, of the fragility of life. The Megillah, or the scroll that we read during this festival, is that of Ecclesiastes. It is this brilliant book, one which we all know. Chapter 1 speaks of the image that we are all part of the continuing flow of life, the image being that of rivers flowing into the seas. It is in this time of life that we become slowly and quietly to understand that all of us, each and every single one of us, are part of nature. And like nature, we live and we die. Yet unlike the animal or plant, our desire is to be part of something eternal. We become aware of time, its speed, and the fact that we are bound, like Isaac on the mountain, by time. We understand when we look into our grandchildren's eyes and know that we cannot, as much as we wish, go where they are going. So we begin to ask ourselves, what can we do? How can we live so that they take us with them? There is a time, as Ecclesiastes 3 reminds us, for everything. To be born, to die. Time is a gift that is given to us. In the middle of this journey called our life, our tradition and our texts remind us that our life is sacred, that time is precious, that we are given the choices as to how to live, so that our time means something to us and our families every day. And that every day is a new gift, which is why we are asked to say the blessing Modeh Ani Lefanecha every morning when we awake. I give thanks for this new day, for this new time, for this new opportunity to answer God's ayeka. These are the discussions, these are the questions that lie before us, and I look forward to sharing them with you. Thank you for your attention.
Well, thank you so much, Rabbi Adress, for your provocative and inspiring words. We are really looking forward to continuing the conversation with all of you. Also, I want to thank Beth Orr for hosting us this morning. They certainly have such a beautiful facility, and I don't see Elisa in the room, but thank you very much for having us here. And also to Federation for their financial backing of this program, which has allowed us to bring this to you at no cost. So thank you to the Federation as well. What we're going to do from here is go into our breakout workshops, and we'll be running 2 sets of workshops. Session 1 will start at about 10:30, and I'll give you a few directions, and there will be people here to help guide you throughout the room. Funeral Pre-Planning 101 is going to be held right here in the sanctuary, so you'll come back here. Everything you ever wanted to know about long-term care, but were afraid to ask, will be held in the social hall. So you'll go back across to where we were eating at the vendor fair, off to the left. Downsizing yourself, downsizing your parents, and staying sane in the process will be held in the chapel. So if you go straight out down the corridor toward the lobby, you'll see it on the left. And finally, the family love letter group will be held in the conference room downstairs. So you go back through the lobby, you'll head downstairs, make a left, and again, there'll be people to direct you. Our vendors will be here all morning up till 1 o'clock, so please stop by, visit with them. They have lots of great information and resources to share with you, and we'll also be having their materials available at our subsequent events as well. And food will be here throughout the morning. Finally, we will ask you if you wouldn't mind to complete an evaluation for us at the end of the program. You'll see it on the back of your green paper. That will be very helpful to us. Any other suggestions you have for other topics, programs that you would like to hear about, feel free to comment, because that's what we're about here with the Bux-Mont Kehillah, is presenting programs that are meaningful and useful to you. As Rabbi just said, one of the things that we hope is that through this effort and others, we'll be developing more and more programs geared toward all of us empty nesters, baby boomers, sandwich generation people, whatever you want to call us, to make sure that we all stay connected and know that the Jewish community is still here for us too, even at this stage of our lives. Anyway, so I think that pretty well takes care of things. Again, we look forward to having you join us at subsequent discussions. You can sign up for them online or at the front desk. Enjoy the rest of the program, and we have about 15 minutes before the next session, before the workshops begin. Thank you.